Peter David has had so many mainstream comic book runs that are defining for those characters. He's done runs on Aquaman, Young Justice, Supergirl, Spider-Man 2099, Incredible Hulk, of course, and X-Factor. These are just some of his well-known comic books. And while sometimes he does some serious work, he's done a Dark Tower adaptation, he's worked in the Star Trek world on both novels and comics, I think that what he's best known for is sort of a light, airy quality to his work, and that's because the dude loves jokes. Puns, visual gags, misunderstandings. His books have a lot of jokes, so tonally, they're sort of an easy read. They're a quick read. But that's not to say that he doesn't do really exceptional character work. It can be very subtle, but I think he always plans out really well-defined character arcs. And I think one of his best examples was his run on the Incredible Hulk, which went for over 10 years. He really reinterpreted the Hulk, gave him a whole load of interesting backstory and definition. He did some great stuff with it, even though every issue was full of tons of jokes. In fact, I bet if we go out and get a random Incredible Hulk comic book, we're going to come across, like, basically something averaging out to a joke a page. Okay? So, without any further ado, let's hit the comic book store, grab a random Hulk issue, and get to it.
We've gone to Comics Dungeon before. They have a really good back issue selection, so I'm sure I'm going to find something cool and random here. Let's go.
Alright, so I chose Hulk number 417. That was an issue that I sort of remember. The Hulk's sidekick is about to get married, and so it's just sort of about his bachelor party, if I remember correctly. We're about to read it. But Peter David is an interesting guy. You know, he broke into the industry in 1985 after working at Marvel in their sales department for a number of years. He always wanted to be a writer. He got work at Marvel, but it was work as a sales guy, but he was eventually able to make that transition. That's so cool that he achieved his dream. And there's a reason we're going to be talking about Peter David. He's got some troubles, but we'll hold that off until the end of the episode. For now, let's read this comic, see how many jokes we come across of different types, and for every trope we come across, I'm going to eat a gigantic green salad. Nah, I'm just kidding. We're just going to read the issue, and then at the end I'll smash some stuff. The issue begins with the Incredible Hulk knocking on the door of Dr. Samson, who is an actual psychiatrist. He's the Hulk's psychiatrist specifically. And of course, we're starting off with a big old visual gag. The Hulk's knocking down the door. We're starting off with a joke, even though, as you're about to see, this is some pretty serious stuff we're going to start off with. But just so that you understand, at this point in time, the Hulk has supposedly merged his strong, savage Hulk persona with the intelligence and discipline and guiding force of Dr. Bruce Banner. He's a united being. And Dr. Samson is also a gamma-powered guy. He's really strong. That's why he's got green hair. But he always retained his intelligence, and he's sort of the psychiatrist to various Marvel superheroes. Now, Dr. Samson has been asking Bruce Banner to come see him for quite a while, but Bruce has been saying, no, you know what, I'm myself, I've got the Hulk's power, but I'm myself and I don't need your help right now. But something horrible has happened to him recently, and so he's finally coming to ask for help. Of course, we have yet another visual gag. It's actually the same gag. It's the Hulk just casually walking through the door frame. So that's two, basically the same joke twice in a row, but you know, separate page, separate joke. Gotta say though, Dr. Samson is super strong. You'd think he maybe would have reinforced his own door jams. He's a tall guy, he's strong, he sees superheroes. He should probably live somewhere that's a little bit more reinforced. Some of that's on him. Over the next couple pages, Dr. Leonard Samson is showing that he's resistant to helping Bruce only because Bruce has rejected his help so many times. And we get a quick visual clue as to what's bothering Bruce. If you've been reading the Hulk comic books lately, you'd know that this is a reference to a two-part story called Future Imperfect, where the Hulk actually fought himself in the future, a version of himself that went evil. And this has disturbed the Hulk greatly. It's what's prompted him to finally seek help. So, you know, earlier I was saying, there's a lot of jokes in this book, but there's also some great character work. Now we cut to the home of Rick Jones, who is the Hulk's former sidekick. Not only the Hulk's, but Rick Jones was also a sidekick to Captain America. He teamed up with the Avengers. He's a friend of the Hulk, and he's actually currently engaged to a woman named Marlo, who, if we went even further back, briefly dated the Hulk in a different persona when he wasn't really Bruce Banner. She dated the Hulk portion. It's too much to go into right now. All that matters is she used to date the Hulk. And now Rick Jones and Marlo are engaged, or technically they were until an issue or so ago when they called it off. Now, the Hulk's girlfriend, Betty Ross, is going to check on them, and she's like, hey, don't worry, Marlo, you know, it was a hell of a lot of work, but I've canceled everything. You know, I've canceled the venue, I've canceled this and that. And then she sees that Rick and Marlo have actually just made up. The wedding is back on. And they ask if she's happy. She starts to get very angry. And Betty says, an entire day of groveling, and you ask me if I'm happy? Marlo and Rick hide behind their bedroom door, and Marlo says she's ecstatic. Witty banter. More jokes. On the next page, we have a brief interlude with Captain America checking in on the Fantastic Four, although at this point in time there were only 3 of them, as their leader, Mr. Fantastic, had apparently died. And they're just saying that, hey, you know, we've had our problems with the Hulk in the past, but Rick is all of our friends, so let's just make sure that the whole superhero community shows up to this wedding. Here's sort of a weird type of gag on this page. Captain America is shooting pool at the Fantastic Four's base while he's talking to them. Sue Storm, Invisible Woman, says, $5 says you don't make that shot. Captain America says, hey, I never bet, but this is a sure thing, so you're on. And he tries to make the shot, and then it doesn't go in. He says, that ball bounced as if a force field were blocking the pocket. You wouldn't have, An Invisible Woman who can create invisible force fields says, I am shocked, I tell you, that you would imply such a thing. Unpredictable characters are absolutely a hallmark of Peter David's writing. You could argue that it's out of character, but I'm going to call it unpredictable. But Invisible Woman's never really been one to make weird jokes. She's certainly never been one to come up with a gamble and cheat. Like, that's just never been a thing that she's done. Who's to say she's not going to do it? Like, the Fantastic Four get along with Captain America, so they're having some fun. I can believe it. It's just that it's such a Peter David thing to do. It's also worth noting that this comic came out in the mid-90s, as you can tell by this version of Invisible Woman's costume. In my opinion, one of the all-time worst versions of a superhero costume. I mean, not only does she have parts of her thighs and her stomach exposed, but she's got a 4 cutout boob window. I mean, I have no idea why she would dress like this. She is a woman who has something like 4 or 5-year-old son. She's just lost her husband, so she's sort of in mourning, and her version of mourning involves creating the sluttiest costume in all of superhero comics. It doesn't make sense. It was the 90s. They gave everybody either armor or weird bikinis, and unfortunately, Invisible Woman couldn't hide from that. The next few pages involve the Hulk talking to Dr. Samson about his time in the future, having to deal with an evil version of himself. And even getting into the fact that he remembers just the rage of his own father who used to abuse him as a child. These were all elements that Peter David added to the character, that the Hulk had an abusive family life as a child, that the Hulk was almost a dissociative identity disorder type of situation. It was another personality, that Bruce Banner always had the potential to have a fractured psyche, and the gamma bomb that created the Hulk was really just sort of placing his rage into another personality that accessed that power. And he's had other iterations of the Hulk through Peter David's writing. Well, he became a gray-colored Hulk that liked to call himself Mr. Fix-It, and he was a mob enforcer, and he would only turn into the Hulk at night, and he was more clever and cunning and sly. So there have been other versions of the Hulk under Peter David's writing. And of course, right now they're dealing with a version called the Maestro, which was this future evil version. Now we cut to the airport where the Hulk and Betty are joining Marlowe and Rick as they wait to pick up Marlowe's mom. Rick is a little nervous because he's never met her mother before, and he says, you know, hey, I am calm. I mean, hey, it's just Marlowe's mom. What's the worst she could do? And the Hulk says, try to stab you with a kitchen knife? Is this a fixed camera sitcom? There's some witty banter going around. I don't hear a laugh track, though. Betty tries to calm Rick down, and she says, just remember what they say, Rick. To get an idea of what the daughter will be like in 20 years, look at the mother. And then Marlowe says, hey, there's my mom, and she points out a stunningly gorgeous lady in the crowd. And Rick gets excited and says, hooah! And then this tiny little lady pops out from behind, and she goes, Marlowe! Misunderstandings. This could just as easily be a Three's Company episode if we just had about 10 more pages. We could really run with this gag. They all make their introductions, and Marlowe's mom, Mrs. Chandler, says to the Hulk, wow, Marlowe wasn't exaggerating. Green skin, amazing. And the Hulk replies, no, Spider-Man is amazing. I'm incredible. That kind of a joke is breaking the fourth wall because, of course, we, the reader, know that the titles of the comics are Incredible Hulk and Amazing Spider-Man, but that's not how they go around introducing one another, except here, the Hulk seems to know what we, the audience, knows. So he's breaking that fourth wall and sort of speaking directly to us. Mrs. Chandler replies to the Hulk, well, with Marlowe, anything is possible. Like in Vegas, she was involved with some grotesque man with gray skin. Thank God she broke that off. Another misunderstanding because that gross guy with the gray skin, yeah, that was another version of Bruce Banner as the Hulk. Now the Hulk grabs Mrs. Chandler's suitcases. He can't lift them! The Incredible Hulk can't lift them! But then, after everybody is stunned, he goes, I'm kidding, see? Again, unpredictable characters. There's a whole page dedicated to this one joke, but Bruce Banner has never really been known for being a guy that cracks jokes or tricks people. There's a quick subplot at a secret organization called the Pantheon, which is a group of scientists and basically secret superheroes that have recruited the Hulk. At this point in time, they're essentially his teammates, a secret organization dedicated to doing good around the world. And one of the issues that we can see here is that team leader Ulysses is not getting along with Hector, basically because he's found out that Hector is gay and isn't going to apologize or change for it. And by the way, I give Peter David a lot of credit for addressing issues like this a lot earlier than other writers were. So props for that. But he cracks a joke right off the bat. Hector is busting Ulysses' balls, saying, aw man, Ulysses, burn that shirt, huh? You look like George Perez. And that's because Ulysses is wearing a loud Hawaiian shirt. Now, George Perez is a comic book artist who tends to wear very loud shirts that are actually designed by his wife. They're mostly of comic book panels. That's breaking the fourth wall. Now we cut to Betty and Marlowe hanging out with Marlowe's mom, and another lady that they both know who had recently been kidnapped by aliens. And Marlowe's mom actually takes this in stride because she reads a lot of tabloids, so she already believes in aliens. There's a knock at the door. Marlowe is whisked into the air. She-Hulk and Invisible Woman are there. They're stuffing Marlowe into a bag, grabbing Marlowe's mom, and Marlowe's mom is shouting, "Oh no, aliens are after my daughter!" But Betty says, no, these are superheroes, they're with us. I'd almost count the invisible Marlowe getting swept up as a sight gag, but I mean, that really is a legit use of Invisible Woman's powers. I mean, it's a gag, but it's also, that's pretty organic. That's pretty story-based. They're whisking Marlowe away to a bachelorette party. It makes sense to me. But Marlowe's mom's reaction is pretty weird. She believes in aliens right off the bat. In fact, she believes in them so much that her first gut instinct is that Marlowe is being abducted by aliens. While Marlowe has a bachelorette party, Rick is having a bachelor party. There's a lot of superheroes there. If we look closely, we can see that Hercules, Iron Man, Swordsman are there, Silver Surfer, The Thing, and Rick is acting drunk. He's actually on Silver Surfer's surfboard saying, "Everybody is surfing." Peter David is not above puns, folks. In fact, I'm kind of surprised we haven't seen more. While everybody's having fun at the party, some sort of supervillain woman kicks open the door and says, "I am the Actesiast, and I have come for Rick Jones." Captain America leaps into action saying, "Hold it, men, better do as she says." And then, on the next page, she begins to remove her clothes. Captain America seems especially troubled by this, biting his lower lip and whispering to Hulk, "Nick Fury said an Actesiast. I thought that was a magician." The Hulk explains that an Actesiast is another name for a stripper. They've hired a stripper. Captain America himself accidentally hired a stripper. We've got two jokes on this page. We've got sight gags, because there's this absurd panel where the Thing has a helmet on and there are lemons stuck in his eye holes, and he says, "What's going on?" That's pretty weird. And of course, misunderstandings. Captain America is a good, noble guy. He thought that he was hiring a magician. This actually leads into a joke on the following page, because the Hulk says, "Please don't tell Betty about this. Women as sex objects. I can imagine what she'd say." Cut to the next panel where Betty is screaming, "Take it off!" And we see that she and her friends are at a male strip club. Not only that, on top of that, we build on that joke. One of Marlowe's friends asks Betty how she met Marlowe, and she explains, "It was right after I left the convent." Yeah, that's not what we would have expected out of Betty, because she really was a nun in training, and now all of a sudden she's whooping it up at the strip club, which is fine. It's just not what we would have expected. While the ladies are enjoying their time, some armed gunmen break into the club, trying to rob everybody, not realizing that there are no less than 5 superheroes there. One of the gunmen fires a shot, but it's stopped in midair by Invisible Woman. And we see Crystal, Scarlet Witch, She-Hulk, Invisible Woman, and some Skrull woman that was engaged to the Human Torch at the time. And they proclaim, "You picked the wrong night, fellows, because we are the Roseanne Arnold Fan Club."
I can't breathe.
Even though that's a completely ridiculous line, it's 100% in character for She-Hulk. If anybody is the Chandler of the group, it's always been She-Hulk. She has a sense of humor. By the way, that's the only action scene in the entire comic. Moving on. Back at Rick's bachelor party, the gentlemen are about to watch a stag film, something with a naked woman in it. They're all excited, except of course for Captain America, who is pretending that he has something in his eye. That's pretty funny. I don't know exactly what kind of a gag I'd call that. That one is legit pretty amusing. But the camera projector won't get started, and the Vision knocks on it. It starts right away, and he says, "It's a knack." The Vision is one of the most stoic characters out there. Not really one to joke around, but he's just sort of hitting the camera projector like he's the Fonz and going, it's a knack. The movie plays and a bunch of the superheroes seem really impressed by the lady in it. And Rick says, you know what? I must be in love because to me, every girl reminds me of Marlo. And then he takes a closer look at the movie. It is Marlo. So we've got a misunderstanding because he's talking about her as though that's not her on screen while everybody else is like, whoa. And we've also got a little bit of witty banter because the Vision goes, that is your fiance? You must be very proud. Mr. Jokes! Alright, so we've got a bunch of tropes. Let's see, witty banter and misunderstandings. We had 4 each of those. 3 sight gags, 2 breaking the wall, 1 pun, partridge in a pear tree. I can make jokes too. But it looks like the one we had the most of was 5 instances of what we're calling unpredictable characters, but could just as easily be called out of character characters, sort of just acting weird just for the sake of a joke. It's not very often that the Hulk is cracking jokes, that the Vision is cracking jokes, but in a Peter David comic, they do. Alright, so 5 of these. Let's go smash some plates, and then I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about Peter David and some troubles that he's having. That was cathartic. I gotta smash stuff more often. I think I understand why Hulk likes it. So anyway, Peter David is a guy that I've actually enjoyed for a long time. I read his entire Hulk run when it was coming out new. Every week when there was a Hulk issue, it was among the first comics that I would read because it was light and breezy. I knew it would be sort of a quick read, but I'd get a little something real for the characters, you know, and even though there's tons of jokes in this, and there's not necessarily a lot of action, there is some good character development, both with Hector and Ulysses and the Hulk or Bruce Banner, whichever you want to call him at this point. It's the same being. There's some real development there as well. So I always really appreciated that. And he's also written just a number of really great comics. I think he's got some deep character arcs combined with a lot of jokes. And some of the jokes can be puns that are real groaners, but it creates an easy read. You know, you just blast through it, and sometimes that's what you want. So anyway, Peter David has written a lot of comic titles regularly every month. A number of years ago, he created a show, I believe, on Nickelodeon. And I guess apparently he made a lot of money that year and was prepared to pay his taxes on it, but according to him, that was the year his then wife surprised him with a divorce and cleaned out a bunch of the bank account. And he has, since that day, worked out a payment plan with the IRS, but has constantly been behind. And then he, you know, by his own words, he's talked about this online in the last few weeks. He says that the IRS stopped bothering him and he thought that maybe it just went away. I gotta admit, I find that part of his story a little iffy, but he's basically asking his fans if they can give him some money. He's trying to pay off his tax bill. It's pretty big. It's something between $80,000 and $90,000 that he needs to pay. But he has a big fan base, and if the fans, you know, gave him $5 or something, it'd make a big difference, and he could probably get out from under this problem that he's been living with for a lot of years. You know, I'll leave it to you to decide whether his story makes sense and you want to help him. I'm in a position where I think even no matter what decisions he's made that has gotten him into this situation, you know, he's provided a lot of entertainment. He seems like a generally good guy, and I would like to help. I'm really not in a financial position to help. You know, I might be able to scrape together $2 or $3. That would be a big deal for me right now. But, you know, I'll leave that decision to you. What I'm going to do is I'll have a link in both the description to this, and as it ends, I'll just have a link to his campaign where you can read the story in his own words and decide if it's something you want to either do to help him or not. But until then, I hope you enjoyed this look at one of his weirder comics. We've got some really funny, weird comics coming up. Until then, keep reading comics.